So today I've got a crazy Slava game for you where people just show me broadside. And it's quite wonderful when you're in a Slava and people show you broadside. Not always are you going to punish every broadside. It's not the ultra consistent machine that everybody makes it out to be. As you can see there on that Montana, we got next to no damage on his broadside. So it's not like this ship is overpowered or anything. I would actually say the ship's a little bit weaker than a lot of the tier 10 battleships, mainly because it just really can't push in all that easily. But it can be nice to play if you get lucky with your dispersion and people show you broadside. That's a lot of caveats. That's a lot of things that have to go right, but it can be really, really good. Des Moines showing a bit too much side. Still no Citadel. Interesting, right? Of course, Slava being one of the ships with the best AA out of all the battleships definitely helps this ship play in tier 10 meta these days. Yesterday we had the Vermont, which when defensive fire is up, has the best AA out of all the tier 10 battleships. But as soon as your defensive fire is off, I would say Slava AA is better than Vermont's just regular AA. And that mainly has to do with the range on it, right? 6.6 kilometers. There we go, we finally get our Citadels. But you can see it's not all that consistent, the Slava. AA, of course, is something that's very important these days in tier 10 games because it allows you to play on the flanks. It allows you to play not quite by yourself, but a little bit farther away from your teammates. You don't have to clump up as much, right? If you were in something like a Yamato, let's say, you really do have to find an AA cruiser or destroyer or just group up with a couple other battleships. Otherwise, you're just going to get struck over and over and over again, and you're not going to have a good time. That's just the way it goes when there's an aircraft carrier in the game. Even a ship like Slava definitely gets struck. It's not like AA is good enough that you're going to completely shoot down a squad of dive bombers, torpedo bombers, that kind of thing before they get a strike off on you. That's just not the way aircraft carriers are designed. They're designed to allow people to strike, right? And as much fun as it would be to get AA that actually shoots down with planes, that wouldn't be a very good experience for the aircraft carrier player. So Wargaming's kind of put themselves in a tough spot with CVs because it's not fun to play against CVs, and in my opinion, CVs aren't that fun to play. So, yeah, it's just kind of bad for the game, in my opinion, because of that. Anyways, on to Slava. The AA, we've talked about. The guns, obviously, I think most people know. Your dispersion formula is different from most battleships. Most battleships follow a pretty linear line out to long range, where their dispersion gets worse and worse and worse as you go to long range. Slava is the same, but the linear line is not nowhere near as steep. The dispersion is better at close range than it is at long range. There's a bit of a misconception there that people think Slava dispersion gets better the longer range you are. Well, that's not exactly true. Slava dispersion is better relative to other battleships at long range, and worse relative to other battleships at close range. It's more of a flat line that gradually increases dispersion as you go to longer ranges. So, shooting at a Stalingrad that's smoked up, blind fire, you can get some pretty decent salvos, right? Double set him there. But the big problem with these guns, of course, is the alpha damage. 2 Citadels, that's only like 24,000 damage. And for a tier 10 battleship, that's not that great. That, especially for 406mm guns, Montana dealing 13,500, right? It's kind of on the low side of the alpha damage. So if you're only getting full pens in something like a Slava, the damage output really isn't that great. You only have 9 guns, and they're only 406s, and they're some of the lowest alpha damage 406s in the game. It's not the funnest experience. So that's where games like this, where you get a lot of Citadels, definitely make the ship feel a little bit better. In my mind, if I'm not getting Citadels in a Slava, I'm probably not having that great of a game. So that's where I'm trying to position on the broadside of enemies, right? That's my goal. I'm not pushing into A. I decided not to do that because there is a Holland there, and I don't really feel like pushing into a Holland. That's not really the best way to play, in my opinion. Torps every minute that are really fast and going to flood you all the time. It's pretty easy to deal a lot of damage in a Holland that way. So we're pushing over to the B cap, hopefully to kill the battleships that are trying to push through the middle. That's the main goal here. Maybe the Kremlin pops out broadside to me. Maybe Republic gets in a position where we can farm them out, that kind of thing. Slava is not a ship where you want to be pushing in. You want to be countering an enemy push, hopefully by getting on their side, right? This Kremlin pushing in like this is a perfect example of something I want to shoot at, right? He's broadside at reasonably close range. We're not guaranteed citadels, but we should get some citadels on the Kremlin. Looking back on it, I should have just turned directly for the Kremlin right now and shot a full salvo into him. I might even dev struck him. Right, so target selection is something I could definitely work on as a player. You don't shoot the same thing, or you don't shoot the correct thing every time, and nobody plays perfectly every single game. There's always something to learn. But there you go. You imagine I had a full salvo there. Maybe we get a couple more citadels. But still, the dispersion's not perfectly a sphere, right? There's not like a little football, for example, going and hitting everybody's citadel for 5 citadels, dev striking everything off the map, right? That's not how this ship works. And I think a lot of people think Slava works like that, and it really doesn't. So to talk a little bit more about the Slava versus Ohio debate, I know I've got a lot of videos on that on my channel, but it's a question that comes up a lot, and I do believe Ohio is just better in the majority of circumstances. Slava is only better against carriers and against long-range targets, right? Long-range broadside targets. I can't even say all long-range targets. If somebody's angling to you at long range, I would actually prefer an Ohio, because Ohio gets a bit of overmatch, right? You can overmatch 30 millimeters in an Ohio. And your dispersion's not quite as good as Slava, but it's not bad either. It's one of the more accurate American battleships. You only get 8 guns instead of 9, but your reload's faster on the Ohio. You get better armor, you get the faster cooldown heals, that kind of thing. Slava only gets 3 heals base, right? So I'm taking Captain's skill to give me more heals on this ship, and we only get up to 4. Slava has the weakness of 26 millimeters bow and stern armor, 32 millimeter deck armor, low HP pool, right? There's a lot of weaknesses on Slava that it gives up for this supposed amazing dispersion, right? And of course, I'm pretty hard on this ship, and that's mainly because it doesn't always act like everybody thinks it does. So I just want to... I'm probably going overboard on the weaknesses of this ship. It's really not that bad. It's quite a good ship, in fact. I'm just trying to give you a realistic view on this ship, so that when you spend, 60,000 research points on a battleship, that you're not regretting that decision or thinking you're getting something that you actually aren't getting, right? Like, it's a lot of grinding to get 60,000 research points, and I don't want people to just be disappointed. I've had a couple people in my Twitch chat who come in and say, yeah, I got the Slava, I should have got the Ohio. I haven't really had anybody come in and say, I got Ohio, I should have got Slava. So I would probably recommend Ohio over something like the Slava. Even after the Ohio got nerfed, its secondaries are no longer the very accurate variety. Now they're just kind of average secondaries, and they're not all that amazing anymore. But the base ship is really good, and what really carries something like the Ohio is that fast cooldown heal, right? A 40-second recharge on your heal is pretty amazing. So that's kind of the thought, my thoughts at least, on the Slava versus Ohio debate. It's not that this ship is bad. I mean, you're looking at a pretty solid game already, right? 7 citadels, 130k damage, and the game's not even over yet. So we've pushed into B here, And we've probably overextended a little bit here. The Holland has come back. He's torping us. The only positive about my position right now is that we're stalling B, and we have a Thunderer with us to provide AA support. Like, we're just helping each other with AA at this point, right? So the aircraft carrier is going to have a bit of a difficult time coming to kill us, but there's a pretty healthy Yamato out there that, surprise, surprise, is able to overmatch our deck armor and our bow and stern armor, as well as basically everywhere on the Thunderer. So the best way to deal with enemy battleships, at least at longer ranges, is to angle like I'm doing right now in a Slava. You don't show completely bow in, because they're just going to guaranteed overmatch your bow, they're guaranteed going to overmatch your deck armor. The goal is to bait them into shooting your broadside armor, which is pretty strong. You got a strong upper belt armor, as well as a reasonably strong citadel protection, right? It's not Kremlin, it's around 50, 60, 70 millimeters less citadel protection than Kremlin has, but it's still sloped and angled in the same way Kremlin's is, so it's actually pretty difficult to get through at these longer ranges. I would say once you're in the 15 to 10 kilometer range that you're going to get citadeled a little more regularly. Even at this angle, though, probably not all that much, because there is a little plate extending, protecting the front little portion of your citadel. So you're not that easy to kill if they're shooting your broadside armor. Of course, if the battleship is smart, or if they've got a bunch of cruisers spamming you with HE, they're just going to shoot your bow, your deck. They're going to aim for the parts that they're guaranteed damage on, and then they're going to kill you pretty quickly. But if you can bait someone into shooting the belt armor, you can actually tank reasonably well, and you can see we still haven't lost all that much HP, considering we've been sitting here in B, although our Thunderer is now dead, so we're kind of left alone here against the CV. Montana's coming in, and a Yamato is showing his backdoor citadel, right? Yamato's got a weird angled citadel, so we aim for that oddly shaped section in the back, and we get a citadel, which is, you know, nice, but this Yamato is still very healthy and could definitely take us out. But he decides to go broadside. We've had a lot of broadsides this game, and we haven't had too many massive hits, I would say. Not the ones that you'd be expecting out of a Slava, right? Normally you would expect maybe a 5 citadel hit here, right? And we haven't really been able to get those. And I don't get those very often. But every once in a while, you are gonna get that blessed dispersion, and you're gonna slap someone for half their HP pool. So yes, Slava probably did better there than a lot of other battleships, but it's still possible for other battleships to get that kind of dispersion if you get lucky. And fortunately, that Yamato didn't shoot us in time to stall us out of the cap, so we get the B cap, and we've kind of tied this game up. It's really close. We're only down by 1 ship. We're nearly catching them on points. If you were looking earlier into this game, we were kind of low on teammates and points and caps earlier on. So we're pulling this back. This is a bit of a comeback game. That Moskva gave me broadside for whatever reason, and we're up to 13 citadels. And, 229,000 damage with 13 citadels out of a tier 10 battleship seems kind of low. And that's because the alpha damage is low, right? In Vermont, I had a lot of citadels, and I had more damage than this, I believe, with less citadels and less hits overall. And that's just because the alpha damage is just so much better on something like a Vermont, right? It's not 50% better, but it's close, right? So keep that in mind. You're going to need more hits to do the same amount of damage as some other competing tier 10 battleships. We killed the Moskva, and now our Montana is risking his life here. He's pushed too far away from me at this point, and this is a big mistake. What you need to do in the endgame scenarios, when there's an aircraft carrier, you need to group up. You just have to group up your AA. You can't go places alone. And this Montana, unfortunately, decided to push out for C a little bit too soon. It's a good idea to go for C, because it's likely that the Holland is going to get A. As you can see, he's in there already. So it's probably good that we go and get C. but he went a little too early, so I'm actually not able to provide AA support. Late game decisions like this, it's a lot of the times better to keep your ship alive, because you can see the clock is ticking down to 3 minutes, and I think a lot of people don't understand, or maybe they underestimate the value of staying alive. Killing a tier 10 battleship is a 100-point swing, right? You can see we lost 60 points, and they gained 40 points just by killing one battleship. That's a big change in the point score. So keeping a tier 10 battleship alive late game is effectively 100 points that your team has. You know, it's held inside your ship. So staying alive can be very important here. Fortunately, we still have a point lead since the Holland was killed. But it could have gotten a lot closer had the Holland stayed alive. And they ended up getting A, for example, if our carrier didn't go kill the Holland. Sorry, I had my phone not on silent. My bad. Yeah, so staying alive late game can be very, very productive, especially when your team's winning like this. There's times, of course, where you just need to make a play, right? You have to just make a play and try and win the game. But late game, if your team's ahead, staying alive is a very, very good option because your ship holds a lot of points and can swing the game quite heavily. So don't do nothing. I'm not saying do nothing, but sometimes the right play is to do nothing to help your team win. It's kind of funny to see people throw away wins when playing. Kind of joke with that on stream and that kind of thing. It's always a funny thing to watch people have a guaranteed win if they just ran to the corner of the map and then they rush in and go and die and they lose a game. It doesn't happen all the time, but knowing the point score, knowing the amount of time left, right? Like there's a minute left on the clock right now. And so it doesn't matter who's ticking up for more points. It doesn't matter who has more caps right now. It matters who is going to be ahead on points in 52 seconds. And at this point, it's pretty much just us, unless this CV is able to kill me, and the Thunderer somehow kills the Conqueror. Something like that would have to happen, but I think it's pretty okay. We've already got 46 plane kills here, so yeah. Midway's going to have a tough time killing us, just because he can't get multiple strikes off. That is the power of having good AA. And that's why sometimes I run a fighter plane on something like a Yamato. It prevents multiple strikes. And that's where CVs really have their power, is when they hit you multiple times with the same squad. But there it is, 15 Citadels, 283k damage. A pretty awesome Slava game. I had a lot of fun with this one. I hope you enjoyed the last couple of videos. Being two pretty incredible battleship games. Let's take a quick look at the captain, and then that'll be it. So the build for this ship that I've been using these days looks like this. I'm using Gunfeeder, I'm using AA Gunner, I'm using both Basics of Survivability and Adrenaline Rush, Concealment, Extra Heal, and Deadeye. That allows me to switch to my HE a little bit faster, because sometimes you do need to swap to HE. Plane damage, of course, you can see how good the AA actually was against Midway there. A little bit of tankiness, a little bit of reload, that kind of thing. Concealment, Deadeye is pretty self-explanatory for this patch. And I do take Emergency Repair Expert. That gets me to 4 heals instead of 3. That's one of the weaknesses of this ship. You only get 3 base heals, much like Heisen and other ships like that. And this build sometimes is used on Kremlin as well, if I'm feeling like running a Deadeye build. So having the Emergency Repair Expert also helps there, giving me an extra damage control. The equipment side of things, I was running range mod, concealment, propulsion. Propulsion definitely helps in those scenarios, like where I was in BCAP, moving forwards and backwards at a reasonable angle, trying to dodge and force people to miss. Aiming systems, pretty self-explanatory. Damage control system, and auxiliary armaments. Trying to keep that AA alive as much as possible. My turrets don't really seem to get broken in this ship too much, so thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed that game. I had a lot of fun playing it, and have a great day.